Even the SNP in administration in East Lothian are looking at running trust schools, passing more power down to the heads and to the school boards. If the SNP are starting to think about that, then isn't that the direction of travel we should be taking? And by passing down responsibility to a local level, we can also make savings by cutting out some of the unnecessary tiers of bureaucracy and management that exist at local government level. And I think that would be warmly welcomed. So I think there's a lot of challenges here. I'm not today going to give you lots of answers because we are very much at the start of this process. But what I think Reform Scotland have done very usefully is given us a challenge, given all political parties a challenge as to what can be done on the road which we should be starting to go down. There are going to be tough choices to be made. The challenge is going to be trying to preserve as best we can the quality of the frontline services, but do so at lower cost. And I think we will only do that if we go down the reform route as is being suggested today. And even though, can I just say in closing, even though Reform is not a Tory front organisation, and I will reiterate that for Geoff's benefit, even though it is not, this political party is very grateful to it for the leadership it is providing on these issues. Thank you.
Briefly in its sheath, Murdo, as I invite Michael Gove, who, regardless of your political ideology, has got to be regarded as one of the, if not the, front-runners in leading debate on educational reform in this country. Michael.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming along this lunchtime. It's a particular pleasure to be on a platform provided by Reform Scotland. Reform has a wee sister south of the border. An organisation that has been helping to drive the debate on public sector reform in England. And it's an organisation which, as well as being led by a guy, Andrew Holdenby, who has been in the Conservative Party, also has the support of people from the Labour Party. Frank Field is on the board of directors, and the support of people from the Liberal Democrats. One of its trustees is a Liberal Democrat MP called Jeremy Brown. And I just wanted to underline the point that across the United Kingdom, there are people in every party who recognise that we've got to clamber out of the trenches that have been dug in the past, in the 80s and in the 90s, and we've got to make common cause in the case for fundamental reform of how we deliver our public services. And one of the things that I'm hopeful about is that Reform Scotland can play that part in helping to bring people out of their foxholes and out of their trenches so that we can forge a consensus across political parties. Because as Geoff pointed out, the need for reform is pressing. We're all entering very, very difficult times economically. And those people who are going to be charged with the governance of Scotland in the next few years are going to have to take some tough decisions. And as those decisions are taken, one thing that I know that politicians like Murdo want to ensure, and it came through crystal clear in what he said, is that we have got to protect the very weakest in our society. The voiceless, the vulnerable, they have to be our first care. And if we are going to ensure that the weakest are best looked after in this difficult time, then we need to display imagination and, yes, radicalism when we contemplate how we can deliver health, education, welfare, and all the good things of life. So the challenge that I throw down today is to the Scottish Labour Party and to the SNP and to Scottish Liberal Democrats as well. We have devolved institutions. We have, in our universities, some of the finest minds in the English-speaking world. We've got the energy, the intellect, and the idealism there. Let's put it to work. Let's put party politics aside. Let's all of us north of the border show some of the imagination that is in operation elsewhere in the world when it comes to trying to push forward change. Because I think one of the great missed opportunities of devolution has been the way in which, instead of pushing forward with reform over the course of the lifetime of the Scottish Parliament, some voices, not within the Conservative Party, but within other parties, have been far too conservative about what Scotland can do. Some people have been far too conservative about the potential of Scottish children. Some people have been far too conservative about how healthcare can be improved. Some people have been far too conservative about the need to foster enterprise. But what we all need to be is more radical, more imaginative, more determined. What do I mean about conservative in the field of education? Well, as we saw from Geoff's figures, it's been striking how educational achievement in Scotland hasn't really improved for all the additional money that has been pumped in. Our pupils are working harder than ever, our teachers are working harder than ever. But the state isn't working as hard as it should on their behalf. And the tragedy is that if you look at other countries, Scotland's been falling behind in the last 10 years in the quality of its children's education. We used to be, in Scotland, 14th in the world for the kids have risen in consequence. The same thing happens in Holland, and for that matter, in Denmark, where the state provides the funding, the state inspects the schools, the state sets the exams. But the state doesn't do as it does here, and insist that the teaching follow a particular rigid pattern. The state doesn't do what it does here, and inspect teachers within an inch of their lives. And the state doesn't do as it does here, and tie the hands of professionals with the sort of red tape that means the contents of a child's lunchbox matter more to inspectors than the contents of their mind. Now, that sort of change has been possible in those countries. It can be possible here. I mentioned Canada earlier. Alberta is one province in Canada, populated, like most provinces in Canada, originally by Scots settlers. What's striking about Alberta, what makes it different from Scotland, and the population of Alberta is very similar to the population of Scotland, is that Alberta is the place in the English-speaking world with the best quality of education. It tops all the league tables of English-speaking countries. And what's special about Alberta in Canada? It's simple. At the age of 11, when children leave primary school, they're given the opportunity, and their parents are given the opportunity, to choose any secondary school they want. And what the Alberta government does is that it takes the money that would be spent on your child's education, and you take it as a credit to the school that you want your child to go to. So in Calgary or in Edmonton, the Glasgow and Edinburgh of Alberta, parents visit schools when their child is in the equivalent of primary 7. They look round. They find the school that will cater best for their child. If their child has special needs, then there are schools which will cater specifically for them. What's happened is that good schools have expanded. Great schools have taken over weak schools. Weak schools have been forced to alter what they do, or to face being taken over by those who are successful. As a result, there's no such thing as a sink school in Calgary or in Edmonton. There is no school that you would go a million miles to avoid. There's no school that you have to buy a posh house in a leafy area to get your children into, because you have the freedom to choose whichever school suits your child. And as a result, Alberta doesn't just top the league tables for the quality of its children's education, it comes near the top of the league tables for the equality of opportunity that all children enjoy. Now, we can have those sorts of reforms here. Those are the sorts of reforms I want to bring to the English education system. But as some of you may know, and others can probably tell, while I had the misfortune to go to an English university, I had the great good fortune to go to Scottish schools. And what I want are future generations of Scottish parents, like my sister, to have the chance to send their children to superb state schools in Scotland. And I think what's necessary is not so much the victory of any political party, but the victory of a set of ideas. And it's those ideas which have transformed education in Sweden, in Holland, in Denmark, in Canada, which I think should be applied here.
Michael, thank you very much. Now, this is your chance to be radical.